In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period.
This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
Oh, welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy. Don't expect us to admit a mistake. We're paying off election debts to those on the take. Attorney General's lying even while...
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. You're listening to America Off the Rails with your host, Rick Robinson.
Good afternoon, Philadelphia. This is Rick Robinson, host of America Off the Rails, and you are listening to WNJC 1360, the powerhouse out of Philadelphia. Now, of course, this is the America Off the Rails show. I come to you every Thursday here. This also happens to be Thanksgiving, so what you're about to hear is a best of episode. But before we get into that, I wanted to take a moment just to give you a couple of things that I'm thankful for. I'm thankful that I still, for the moment, live in the land of the free and the home of the brave. I'm thankful that I live in the best country in the world. Yeah, she's having problems right now. She has issues, but we're going to try to fix them. So today, what I want to do is give you some interviews from different perspectives. In case you've missed it, I do have the interview with John Sununu that we'll be listening to today. And then I also have an interview from a different perspective on a radio show that I appeared on and was actually interviewed that will be finishing out the show. But I did want to take a couple of minutes just to kind of hang out with you guys and tell you what I was thankful for. So we've started with the important stuff, of course, the country. You know, this is the best country. There's no other country like it. That's why everybody likes to try to come here. Then, of course, I have my wife, Mrs. Robinson, and then my children. I'm very thankful for them, who right about the time this show starts playing, I will be starting to plate up Thanksgiving dinner. So, because we do ours kind of early, in case other people have ones they need to go to later. But the other most important thing that I want to talk about that I'm very, very thankful for is you guys. The fans. The folks that have made America Off the Rails what it is. We have folks that tune in every single day, every time the show is on without fail. They send me emails. They send me communications. They let me know what it is that they think I'm doing right. Some of you even let me know what you think it is that I'm doing wrong. And before anybody says anything, I like those emails, the positive ones and the negative ones, because I take them to heart. I take the information that you guys give me, and I try to make things better. If there are some of you that are making valid points of things that I should do differently, then I definitely try to do those. So that's my main point today, is I want to let everybody know that I'm thankful for you. I'm also thankful for WNJC, because without WNJC, you wouldn't be listening to me in Philadelphia right now. I'm also thankful for Rick Schrader, the founder of the Conservative Commando Radio Network, which now my radio network, the Spark Radio Network, has become a rather big part of. We now have 3 shows on WNJC. Mine, America Off the Rails, of course, Game On with JD and Stacy, or actually just JD and Stacy, because sometimes they send their Sunday shows over too, or they do one specifically for this channel, just like I do. Then, of course, we have the newest one that you guys got a sneak peek of the other day, Office Hours with Dr. Randy Arrington. So that's now 3 shows, or 3 times a week, that you can hear the offerings of the Spark Radio Network right here on the Conservative Commando Radio Network. And that is another thing that I'm very, very thankful for. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into one of the interviews and go ahead and get that queued up. Again, I just want to tell everybody, I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I hope you are spending time with your family. If you happen to be in a car or somewhere where you can have a radio on, thank you for spending the time, part of your Thanksgiving, with me as well, because it means the world to me that so many of you do take the time out of your day to listen to the shows that we've put together, because you have so many choices. That's really the truth of it. There are so many ways that you can get your entertainment and your information now, that the fact that so many of you decide to spend your day with us, and with me specifically, is just mind-blowing. And there's no other way to put it, folks. There are so many other people that you could listen to, and you choose to listen to me. And for that, I am eternally and forever grateful. So I do hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'll be back with you next week, and we'll come back hard-hitting and truth-seeking as ever. Happy Thanksgiving from all of us at the Conservative Commando Radio Network and the Spark Radio Network and K98 Talk.
Calls, we got a pen and telephone to bypass all your laws. Political correctness will replace the Bill of Rights. Support religious freedom, bless you, pray to Jesus Christ. The press is in our pockets.
All right, folks, we're back. We're live. This is America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson, and right now I am joined by a very special guest, Mr. John Sununu, former Chief of Staff for the George Herbert Walker Bush administration, Bush 41, also former governor and the author of The Quiet Man. Wanted to make sure I got the introduction down for you this time now that I'm not trying to do 14 things at once. Good afternoon, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm fine.
It is an honor to have you here, sir. So like I told you during the break, I think I want to spend at least as much of this segment as I can giving you a chance to talk about what inspired you to write the book, some of your favorite moments from the book, just give us a general overview. I don't want you to give away too much because we want folks to go buy it. Speaking of which, the link to the book will be in the podcast episode that publishes here later as well. For anybody that's interested.
Thank you very much. Well, I wrote The Quiet Man, which is about the presidency of the first President Bush, to put between the two covers of a book what I thought were his extremely significant accomplishments, many of which people don't really recognize how significant those achievements were, and to put into one place, if you will, a record of the facts of what happened almost a quarter of a century ago that made a huge difference in terms of stabilizing the world at that time and improving things in America as well as around the world. And I wanted to give this president the credit he deserves, get this president the credit he deserves, because he frankly was much too modest a man to brag about it for himself. And I thought after 25 years, it was time that somebody did some bragging for him.
What you're saying is the book, basically, you wanted, just to summarize, what you wanted to do was give people the perspective of Bush 41, the first President Bush, that you had. Because
right.
I agree with you. I mean, I have to admit, I'm younger. I grew up in the Reagan era. I was in second grade. I watched Reagan get shot on TV in second grade. It's actually one of the most embedded memories that I have. But I was just starting to understand what politics was really as a fledgling adult during the Bush administration. And I think, in some ways, he's gotten a pretty bad rap, to be honest. And I kind of get the impression from the book, I have to admit I have not had a chance to read it yet, but I do plan on it. I kind of get the impression just from the few interviews that I've heard and the little bit that you just said there, that what you're trying to do is basically give folks the perspective of the man that you actually knew instead of how he was portrayed.
Right. Look, everyone recognizes that George Bush came into office after Ronald Reagan sort of set the table. Reagan had rebuilt America's defense capacity. The Soviet Union saw that they couldn't keep up, and there were indications that Gorbachev recognized this and wanted to somehow perhaps bring the Soviet Union into better interactions with the rest of the world. And Bush saw this and used, frankly, the leverage that comes with peace through strength, with the strength that Reagan had put in place. Reagan had built this up, and Bush used this to create the results that were available with the great diplomacy that Bush was able to bring to the game. For example, he first of all had to unify our NATO partners, Margaret Thatcher, Helmut Kohl, Francois Mitterrand. Each one had a slightly different agenda, and you can't deal with the Soviet Union with a divided agenda amongst the Allies. And Bush worked hard on each one of them individually to create a common agenda, and they agreed that they would make this a significant initiative of suggesting a major reduction of U.S. forces in Europe, troops and armor, if the Soviet Union would make an equivalent reduction. And that offer was put on the table, and Gorbachev essentially accepted it and began withdrawing the troops that were occupying the countries in Eastern Europe, the Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania. And in essence, George made the wager, and Gorbachev accepted the opportunity to do that, and it opened the process up for free elections there. And as we know, what eventually happened, we ended up with what George Bush called a Europe whole and free. The Czechs were freed, the Poles were freed, they had elections, they had democratically elected governments. Even in East Europe, Eastern Germany, which was sort of seen as the place that the Soviets would give up last, Gorbachev allowed the relaxation which led to the collapse of the Berlin Wall. And on that amazing day, we were in the Oval Office. The press, the news came through the press. We held a small news conference. And I think one of the amazing demonstrations of presidential discipline is that George Bush knew that if he overgloated, if he overcrowed about the fact that the Berlin Wall had come down, that the hardliners in the Soviet Union could take advantage of this and perhaps either get rid of Gorbachev entirely or tie his hands from doing any more. And Bush had the discipline to certainly express great satisfaction at the freeing of Eastern Europe, the final symbol coming down, but he did it in such a way that he didn't embarrass Gorbachev. Other folks also know about the other great foreign policy achievement of George Bush. When Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, Bush made a very simple statement: this aggression shall not stand. And he said that if Saddam Hussein did not leave Kuwait, we would use force and get him out. And the art form, the artistry of the presidency that Bush demonstrated was putting together a coalition that included not only Arab nations going to battle against another Arab nation, but it included the former foe of the at the superpower level. The Soviet Union themselves became part of that coalition. And in a very patient way, the president built up our resources, and then in about 5 days of combat, expelled Saddam from Kuwait. And then Bush did something very controversial. He chose not to follow Saddam into Baghdad. And at the time he was criticized, but now with hindsight, I think everybody recognizes that it was an extremely smart move not to do that. Otherwise, he would have been caught in the quicksand of an occupation. And that's the last thing in the world that the world needed at that time. Those are the two most important foreign policy achievements the president's recognized for. What I try to do in the book is to also point out that he was a great domestic policy president, and that's something most people don't understand. George Bush passed more legislation, more conservative, free market-oriented, individual liberty-oriented legislation than any president since, except for Lyndon Johnson and Franklin Roosevelt. And the Bush legislation was founded on free market principles and founded on individual freedom and liberty. It included the very much criticized Budget Pact of 1990, the 5-year pact in which the Democrats, Tom Foley was the Speaker, he controlled the House 260 to 165. George Mitchell was the head of the Democrats in the Senate. They controlled the Senate 55 to 45. They were determined not to let the president have a multi-year budget without some taxes. And Bush looked around and saw the economy faltering. The savings and loan crisis had really created havoc in the real estate side of our economy, and the economy was truly slowing down and unemployment was growing. He had just sent our young men and women to the Middle East. This was in August, September, October of 1990. He had just sent them to get ready to take on Saddam Hussein in Kuwait, and the last thing he could tolerate would be a sequester of the defense funds while those folks were needing the resources to do what had to be done to get Saddam out of Kuwait to protect themselves. And so the president had to accept some taxes in the package. The package he negotiated was one that included an increase in the gas tax, a gas tax that had not been indexed for inflation in almost a decade. And what he got in return for it was extremely important. He got 3.5 times as the size of the tax increase. He got 3 in spending cuts. He got a new set of budgeting rules, which put a cap on the growth of spending. It also required that any new programs have their own funding process so that you couldn't just add deficit spending to the package. And what happened after that budget was passed is the economy began growing. We had the great growth years of the early and mid-1990s, and we began to generate surpluses for the first time in decades. And the surpluses that Bill Clinton loves to take credit for are really the result of George Bush taking the political penalty of accepting a piece of legislation that had some taxes in it, but one which was extremely important to creating a dynamic economy and creating surpluses and growth and jobs. On top of that, he passed the Clean Air Bill based on free market principles and flexibility instead of command and control. He vetoed a civil rights bill that was a quota bill and got it rewritten so that it was truly a fair civil rights bill. He proposed and got the Americans with Disabilities Act. He got legislation which deregulated the energy industry, and we're really benefiting from those things. He restructured the farm programs so that a great chunk of the old subsidy programs were actually converted into incentives for exports. And over a short period of time, we became the biggest exporting nation in agriculture in the world. And that was a huge contribution to the economy. He passed a crime bill that began to provide the resources to the cities to deal with what at that time had been a growing crime problem. He passed legislation and an executive order on immigration, which gave a focus on immigration to people coming into the country with special talents, and converted some of the allocations of immigration slots to people coming in to complete families, so that the immigration program became an efficient program. There are countless other examples of his commitment to good policy, including getting the governors, the 50 governors together, only the third time in history that a president has called a convocation of all the governors, and they focused on trying to recognize how important K through 12 education was, and each one of them went back with a commitment to focus their state resources on K through 12 education. So the point is this was the president that, although he's known for his foreign policy, really had a huge level of success in conservative principles on the domestic side as well.
All right, folks, we're on with former Governor John Sununu, author of The Quiet Man, and he's been basically filling us in on his perspectives when it comes to Bush 41. Now, we are getting to the point where we're about to have to start winding down the show, but before you have to go, I do have some questions, because you brought up some interesting things that are honestly kind of the flip side parallels of some things that are going on today. You mentioned the whole the deal with Russia and the Berlin and the wall coming down and everything else, and how Bush could have basically taken his victory lap and he could have pounded his chest and said, I did this, but he didn't do that because he knew that it might have adverse consequences. Fast forward to today, right, and we have a president who's basically taking his victory lap in any way that he can, and then touting down anybody who tries to say, I don't think this is a good idea. It just seems to me
you've touched on a very important point on what's happening today. This agreement with Iran, if the president had stuck to his own criteria that he laid out a few years ago as to what would define a good deal, he might be able to get some support for this. But this is a bad deal, and the Iranians knew that this president was desperate to get his name on an agreement, and they played him for a fool. And for him to be bragging about this deal is really ludicrous. It reminds me, with him, kind of flaunting this deal and saying that it was either this deal or war, it reminds me of Neville Chamberlain coming back and saying, peace is at hand. I think they were both equally naive as to the effect of that. But as you point out, this president wanted to beat on his chest and get some credit.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it comes across. And I mean, it astounds me that someone that could be as intelligent as he has to be could be this naive. I mean, because he's not a stupid person. He's not common sense. I don't think he has much more than a modicum of that, but he's not stupid. And I don't understand how it is that nobody's calling him on the fact that he basically just admitted that he lied all the way through the 2012 run-up, because he said they were nowhere near the capabilities that they have right now. He said that over and over and over again, that their capability for nuclear arms was not our concern.
He misled America on everything. He's misled America on Obamacare. He's misled America on this issue, as you pointed out here. He's misled America on frankly, every major issue he talks about. It's the hallmark of this administration.
So I guess as someone who's actually watched and been a part of the political system and kind of over the years still kind of from the ear of it kind of kept your ear to the ground, or the feel of it kind of kept your ear to the ground, so to speak. What do you think we can do at this point? Because I've kind of gotten the impression now where the majority of the American people just honestly don't care anymore. As long as they've got a TV to watch and they've got food in front of them, those are really the two things that seem to concern them most, and that worries me.
Well, we are at a tipping point in terms of electorate. I do think the key to solving any sort of problems is presidential leadership. I know people talk about gridlock, but there is no solution to gridlock without presidential leadership. Congress cannot organize itself. It needs to be led. The opposition needs to be led, and the party of the president needs to be led. And I think one of the things I try to point out in my book is that Bush achieved all that great, fairly conservative legislation with a Congress that was completely in the hands of the Democrats. So it can be done with a president who knows how to lead and is willing to work on a daily basis to get those results. When we were trying to negotiate a budget agreement, Dan Rostenkowski, who was the Democratic chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, we had him down for about 24 one-on-ones with the president to break log jams on issues. The president has to spend political capital. If we can elect a conservative president who knows how to deal with the legislature, who has understood how to make executive decisions, who is willing to take the political fire for making hard decisions in the best interest of the country, I'm not saying we can reverse everything horrible that's been done in the last 6.5 years in one fell swoop, but given 4 or 8 years of a conservative president, we can get this back to where we were.
And I do completely agree. I think at this point we're going to have to get somebody conservative in the White House. The problem is, anytime we vote for anybody who tells us they're conservative, they get where we put them, and then they wind up doing much the same thing as the folks that came before them, which is becoming my concern at this point.
Let's be fair. Our presidents, our Republican presidents, have produced very conservative results while they were there. They sometimes have had to deal with difficult circumstances. And after 9/11, I recognized that the second Bush, George W. Bush, had to increase the budget dramatically in order to rebuild our national security structures and so on. But for the most part, I think our Republican presidents in the last 50 years have been extremely conservative, considering what they could and couldn't do with the Congresses they had to deal with. Look, any one of our candidates that are running now will be 100 times better than what's in the White House now.
No, I completely agree, and I think you might have misunderstood. I meant as a whole. It seems like when we finally get the pendulum to where we think it's going to start swinging conservative for the entire group of the legislature and everybody else, it seems that they get in there and then things kind of go the same way as before. But you do bring up one last question I kind of want to get to before we do really have to call it, because we've got another show coming on right behind us here in just a couple minutes. You mentioned that any of the folks that are running right now would be better than who we have in the office currently, and I do wholeheartedly agree with that. Well, except for maybe Krispy Kreme. I'm not sure I could pull the lever for him. But anyway, so do you have a particular front runner of your own at the moment?
I don't, but I do lean towards governors and former governors. I really think we need somebody who's herded the cats of a legislature in the past, who's made executive decisions without being able to hide in the multitudes of a legislature. And so I do think at this time we need somebody that has come out of a state house, out of the governor's office. But there are other candidates as well that if they get the nomination, I'll certainly support. But if you're asking my preferences, it is in most of the governors we have running. I do think that the system and the process will sort things out, and I think we're going to end up with a very good nominee, as long as we all remember that with so many candidates, most of us will not get our first choice. We're all divided amongst so many candidates that most of us are not going to get our first choice, and we have to recognize that's going to happen, and we've got to pull together after there is a nominee.
Yeah, I agree, because I think that was our biggest failing in 2012 is we had too many people that did not want the final pick to be Romney. I voted for him.
Right.
I honestly was a little disappointed with his stances during the debates because I thought there were a couple of very big points that he caught the administration in falsehoods, and his group did not pursue them. And actually, when I reached out to contact his group to find out why they weren't pursuing them, I was basically told in no uncertain terms that they had chosen to take a higher stance when it comes to the debates. It doesn't make any sense to me because he had him dead to rights twice and he didn't use it. So I don't know if he ever decides to run again, which at this point I don't think he will. I don't think I could support him again, but at this point I pretty much agree with you. We have to get somebody that's conservative in there, and at this point I guess it really doesn't matter who it is, because if we get another Democrat in there, especially the ones we have to choose from now, we're just I don't think there's enough time to save anything anymore. But at this point, we are about out of...
If that happens, we'll all be looking at land
somewhere. But yeah. So anyway, we are actually about out of time. I just want to take a moment again to say thank you very much for appearing with us this evening, sir. It has been my honor. Again, as a reminder, this show will be going out all over the place once it concludes, so there will be a lot more folks that will hear it in the future that weren't even listening to it tonight. And from what I can see here, we've had a pretty big turnout in the chat room, so I know we've got a pretty big live turnout as well, because the numbers are usually pretty different between the number of folks that we have in the chat and the number of folks listening live. So I do want to thank you again for coming on with us this evening.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right,
Thanks for having me.
Just as a reminder,
we'll do it again sometime.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. And anytime you want to come back on, I now officially consider you a friend of the show, so you have a sitting invitation whenever you want. All right.
Great.
So
thank you. Keep up the good work.
One last thing before you go. Remind everybody again the name of the book and where they can find it.
The name of the book is The Quiet Man, The Indispensable Presidency of George H.W. Bush, and you can get it at your local bookstore or Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any way you like ordering books. Everybody's got it.
You are listening to the best of America Off the Rails. This is Rick Robinson. I'll be back with you next week. Until then, have a happy Thanksgiving. We'll be back after these commercial messages.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
It got up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
Welcome back. You're listening to the best of America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson. I'll be back with you live next week. Until then, I do hope you have a great and wonderful Thanksgiving. Spend some joyous time with your family. Now back to the show.
Welcome to Voices of Global Freedom Radio.
For the audience benefit, this on the line with us, delighted he called in, is Rick Robinson, the Grand Poobah of Sparks Radio Network. We are bragging about being on your syndicate with Sparks Radio Network and K98. Rick, tell the audience how they can find you on the internet, please.
Well, there's several places you can find us. If you're looking specifically for the Spark Radio web network, we do actually have our own website. It's just like it sounds, www.thesparkradionetwork.com. We also, through a business partner of mine, I have started an online station that I am the general manager of, as well as the managing partner of the network that I'm building. And that is K98talk.com. As far as the various ways you can find the shows, at this point they're about being disseminated everywhere. My show, America Off the Rails, is available on iHeartRadio. It's available on TuneIn Radio anytime the station is live with my broadcast. It's also available through Spreaker. You can find some of our older episodes, if you're adventurous, right here on Blog Talk Radio. And also, I have recently been picked up by Stitcher. So pretty much, if you don't know how to find me, it's mainly because you're not looking for me. Just saying.
Stitcher is quite an accomplishment, isn't it?
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome.
We are also told that you've been accepted by the Conservative Talk Radio Directory. Congratulations, Rick.
Thank you very much for that. It's actually no one was more surprised by that than I am, to be quite frankly honest. But I'm really hard on myself when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I hear from people all the time what a great job we do, and I'm just like, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's really, I mean, for me, the biggest thing, honestly, and this is going to sound a little weird, because, I mean, I'm on a website now with Sean Hannity and some of the others, but for me, the biggest one that kind of stands out as to just my aha moment of making it onto something like that lists, I think it's there's 100 different talk show hosts on there, but the one that stood out for me was the Jerry Doyle show, because he's now a conservative talk show host, but he used to be, and well, he still is, he's an actor, but he used to play on some shows that I watched while I was late teens, early 20s, like Babylon 5, and I'm a pretty big sci-fi junkie as well as a politics junkie, so the fact that I'm on a website that has my picture a few rows below his just kind of really made my day. Just saying.
You're an Asimov kind of guy. Are you?
I'm pretty much anything but the kitchen, everything including the kitchen sink kind of guy when it comes right down to it. I have an eclectic group of interests all the way around.
We always have also, it's quite an honor to be on the Conservative Talk Radio directory. It really is. We're pleased. Ken, the fearless leader like you, the firm hand of the Conservative Talk directory, is forming a new board of directors. Backpack and I and Jana Rama, founding editor of themagnifiedview.com, are really honored to be members of that board of directors of the directory, Rick. So we're tickled to death, really. We're working closely with Ken. Yeah, I talked with him the other day, Backpack and I did, and he's a real pleasure and privilege, he said, to have you on there.
Well, it's definitely my honor. So the next time you speak to him, just pass along my gratitude, because it's, like I said, it's just to be on the same webpage with some of those guys after spending so many years listening to folks like Sean Hannity and Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh and even Jerry Doyle, which is honestly my number one pick out of that list, just because I am sci-fi junkie as well as political junkie. But just to be even on that website at all is just a complete honor for me. So next time you talk to him, just tell him I said thanks again.
I will. Ken's listing us under 5 categories. One of them is top news picks. So within the directory, he has a bunch of categories, for best producer and best this and that, and top news picks. And we were really thrilled that he's included us along with Hannity, Limbaugh, and others. So we're doing something right. We sure intend to keep doing it with you, Rick.
Yeah, I would definitely say you guys are definitely doing not only doing some good, but also doing the right thing. Because like you said, he's got you guys in several different categories in there. And the fact that I'm even in one of them is amazing to me. So the fact that you guys are in there multiple times just speaks volumes as to the work you're doing. So hats off to both of you.
We thank you. We're going to promote the Sparks Radio Network. I understand, Backpack told me that you've invited us on your show.
Yes, sir.
Well, we're excited about that.
At this point, I think, unless something's changed, I think we were looking at, this Thursday's upcoming episode. Is that correct?
Good to go.
Yes.
All right.
We're good to go.
So we'll be on.
A lot breaking in the world to talk about, I'll tell you. What's the name of your show, Rick?
The show that I do that's on Monday through Friday and then on Saturday mornings to afternoon is America Off the Rails.
How long have you been on radio?
Coming up on, we started February 2013, so coming up on 2 years in a couple of weeks, scarily enough.
What surprises have you had? Good ones, bad ones, any kind?
Honestly, I really haven't had any bad surprises. I mean, because honestly, this started out with no expectations at all. It was just something that I decided I was going to try to find a way to do, and I felt like it was a way for me to try to make a difference. And for me, there really haven't been any bad surprises. The biggest surprises is realizing that there are so many people out there that hold the same type of views that I do, because I spent, I guess, way too much time listening to, as we all in the business now call them, the mainstream media. And you just really start to feel like there's nobody else out there who thinks and feels the way you do when you don't hold those same values. And for me, the biggest surprises and the nicest surprises are when I get emails or when I get interaction from Twitter and I hear from folks that say, hey, I listened to your show the other day. You're saying the exact things that I believe and the exact things that I wanted to hear, and I'm so glad you're out there as a voice. And I'm sure you guys get those same kind of emails too. So, I mean, for me, there really aren't any bad surprises, at least not so far. I'm getting more well-known now, so I'm sure some bad surprises are probably coming soon. But I will take them as I roll with the punches, just like I do pretty much anything else.
We're getting emails, Ricky Robinson. They want to know what your background is.
My background actually is former law enforcement, also some state work here and there. As far as broadcasting experience, up until I started this, I really didn't have any. But I did spend quite a few years in uniform for both private and public sector. So that's basically the gist of my background. I was self-employed for nearly over a decade after I got out of public sector work. I ran a security firm and a private investigations firm until the economy crashed in 2008. And when that started going out of business, I basically took a job that I thought I was going to hate just to make sure I could put food on my family's table. And since then, I've been doing a lot of customer service work, which has helped me, I think, refine a lot of the skills I needed to be able to start doing things like this. So, not really anything great.
Sorry, Rick. I don't know that we ever discussed it. We have been active in the counter-terrorist business since 1974. That's why, to this day, we work with major intel and law enforcement, federal and allied agencies. That's why we appear under the pen names Yoda and Backpack. We started in 74, Rick, with the Munich massacre of the Israelis. So we've taught counterterrorism to major organizations around the world since then. I'm older than a rock, as you know. We're still active in counterterrorism. We've got a bit in common, don't we? Were you sworn somewhere?
Yes.
Were you sworn as an officer somewhere?
Yes.
Good on you, brother. Well, we've got a lot in common, more than we knew, don't we, Backpack?
Yeah, we do, definitely. And Ricky Robinson has been featuring Voices of Global Freedom Radio on Drive Primetime every Friday on the SparkRadioNetwork.com, so that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, anytime you guys are up on the website, you're also up on our TuneIn feed, so it literally actually does become drive time for anybody who has access to the app with all the smart card technology we have out there now.
That's great.
We're going to promote your network on magnifiedview.com. So we'll be doing press releases, we'll be doing other promotions, we'll be running your show and your lineup, Rick. How far in advance do you book guests usually?
Actually, as of right now, for my show, I haven't actually started moving to a guest format because up until now we couldn't support it. I have been working out technical issues over the last couple of weeks, and at this point I do believe we haven't worked out well enough where I would like to start booking guests. As of now, my calendar's open, so if you guys have any suggestions or anybody that you think would be a good fit, after you may want to hang out on the show first, kind of see how it usually goes, or maybe go back and listen to some of the older episodes. But at this point, I am going to start trying to move towards having guests on that show, but up until now, it's basically just been me ranting and talking about the major news events of the day with a few sound clips thrown in, just to make sure it's not just me talking over and over again.
Because of our contacts and Backpack's hard work, we have a stunning guest. It includes Representative Darrell Issa, Duncan Hunter, general officers, Pulitzer nominee journalists, Fox News anchors, and just a stunning lineup. Lately, we've got some Egyptians that have left Islam, pretty famous guys. I think you ran one of our programs where IQ, what's his name?
IQ Rassouli
has offered care under the Muslim Brotherhood, that umbrella of evil. He's offered them $1 million to prove him wrong about Islam, and they can't come near him. So we have a stunning lineup of guests. I'm sure a lot of them would love to be on your program.
Well, I'm definitely open, and like I said, for the moment, my calendar is wide open because I hadn't actually started booking guests yet. So
we believe firmly in cross-promotion. We don't want to hide our light under a bushel, somebody said. So you've sure been great to us, and we hope we've been good for you, Rick. We want to know you a long, long time.
Oh, it's definitely been mutually beneficial, and like I tell everybody else, I'm either going to keep doing this until I've no longer got breath or until I've no longer got an internet connection, whichever one happens first.
Well, I'm still sitting around doing it, backpacks doing it, and cops and agents pick us up and drive us around, and it couldn't get any better. Could it, Backpack?
It's great. We're excited about 2015, and Ricky, if you just want to speak to what are some of the rantings that you've had about 2015 and the abomination and that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing, and you guys kind of touched on one of them right as I was about to call in. It took me a minute to get queued back in because, of course, Spreaker, or not Spreaker, but Blog Talk shuts everything down as you're trying to call in. But Yoda was referring to the whole debacle with Cuba now. And I guess the thing that drives me crazy about that is libertarians and the more liberal-leaning folks that are talking about what a great thing this is going to be for both their economy and ours. And they don't seem to take into account the very things that Yoda mentioned, which basically we've now, again, with a very porous southern border, swung our doors wide open, and now anybody that wants to come in from there is basically going to be able to find a way to do it. And we could have spies from pretty much anywhere that's communist in the world at this point pouring in, and nobody's going to know the difference. And it's the same reason over and over again, while I keep talking about if they really want immigration reform, the first thing they need to do is block the doors on the border, because at this point we have people coming from countries to the south of us that have bases from other countries that hate us. And I hate to say, and people get on me for this all the time, but if you stand someone of Muslim descent next to a Mexican and they're wearing the same clothes, you can't tell them apart. That's not racial profiling, that's just common sense. So if they really want things to change, the first thing they need to do is make sure that our borders are secure, and then we can take a look at this immigration mess that they keep wanting to talk about. But for now, all we keep doing is making more and more things available to more and more people that hate us, and eventually it's going to blow up in our faces.
Point well made, Rick. Sorry, you'll know in law enforcement, we work closely with ICE and the Border Patrol. We've got a reputation in hostage and barricade negotiation and training. The Border Patrols have been in their own handcuffs for a couple of years now. They've been told to withdraw from firefights, from gunfights. Of course, the cartels know this, so they're sending their mules over, people with drugs now and human trafficking. They're sending them over with AKs, secure that our valorous, heroic Border Patrol has to retreat, virtually surrender from that. Is that the damnedest thing? Also, they are picking up Hezbollah recently, ISIS, some Korans on our side of the border. So no question, Hezbollah, now a couple ISIS flags have been found on our side of the border. I don't see it ever shutting down. Do you, Backpack or Ricky?
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Ricky, on that?
I mean, at this point, I really don't see any way of fixing it without doing a full reset down there because, I mean, and to be honest, this all stems back to one of the biggest things that everybody's been throwing a fit about is this whole immigration mandate that Obama came up with. That was the most pointless thing that he ever did other than just to thumb his nose at the American people and say, I know I told you I couldn't do this because I'm not a king, but look what I'm doing now. Because the bottom line point is, with the policies he already has in place, only 1% of anyone who comes across his border illegally is ever going to face any type of interdiction from ICE. And it's designed that way on purpose at this point. So all he's doing now is basically flaunting his executive powers, showing the people and the rest of the government that he's going to do what he wants whenever the heck he wants to do it, and the rest of us can just sit back and do nothing but try to vote for change. And now that we all these Republicans that are supposed to be in here, so far from what I've seen from them, it seems like they're not really doing too much any different so far either. That's my biggest concern about 2015 and 2016 is so far, I know they've only been in office for a couple of weeks now, but so far I just see Boehner and McConnell basically just kind of going along with whatever the president wants at this point, and I really hope at some point they find their spines again.
So do we. They're making a list of what they can't do. They keep adding to the list. Radio's about to shut it down for a couple minutes. I don't want it to be abrupt. Wrap it up for us, Rick. We're delighted to work with you. It's enormous mutual benefit. Moreover, a huge benefit to our audiences. So we'll let you wrap it up, brother.
Well, thanks again for having me on, just for even this brief a time, and I do look forward to having you guys on Thursday. Just to wrap things up, you asked what my biggest thoughts and fears were for 2015. At this point, like I said, I'm just hoping that at this point the Republicans start telling the president what they can do by pushing everything through the houses and making him veto every single thing that they want done, so that by the time it is time for the 2016 election, they have a list of this is what we've tried to do, this is what the president has stopped us from doing. So we need our person, whoever that might be, please for the love of God, not Bush or Christie, to be the one that comes into the office so that we can move forward and actually get these things done. Now, whether that happens or not remains to be seen. But if Boehner and McConnell don't find their spines, I'm not holding my breath.
We thank you, Ricky Robinson. It's been a great interview with you, and Mel Flynn, Hollywood president of Republicans. Thank you so much. We're happy to be syndicated with K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network and TopTalkRadio.com. Thank you so much, Ricky. Have a great weekend.
Talk to you off air. Thanks. Let me join back, Pat. Good to know you, brother. We'll know each other a long time.
Thank you.
Both did everything you earned by breaking your backs. We're gonna redistribute when we make our pay tax. Hey, sit back down.
Screw you guys. I'm getting him. Later.
Game over, man. It's game over.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield.